Good Monday morning, everyone. I'm Errol Barnett, in for our friend and neighbor Vladimir Duthier. Right now, we're gathering all the big news taking place here in the U.S. and around the world. President Donald Trump questions whether it is his job to uphold the Constitution. We'll discuss this and some other eyebrows-raising comments from his wide-ranging interview over the weekend. Israel vows to conquer and hold territory in Gaza as it falls under a new attack from Houthi rebels. We'll break down new developments on two fronts. And a staffing shortage brings hundreds of flights to a halt at one of the country's busiest airports. Why is the problem still not resolved after nearly a week of delays and cancellations? All that and more coming up right now on CBS News 24/7. All right, let's begin with all of these headlines coming out of the White House at this moment. President Trump says he does not know if all U.S. citizens and non-citizens are entitled to due process under the law. When questioned on NBC's Meet the Press, he responded, quote, "I'm not a lawyer." But listen to this. The president also said he doesn't know if it's his responsibility to uphold the Constitution.
Don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States as president?
I don't know. I have to respond by saying again, I have brilliant lawyers that work for me, and they are going to obviously follow what the Supreme Court said.
Interesting response. CBS News correspondent Natalie Brand joins us from the White House with more on this. Good morning to you again, Natalie. What is required of this and any president according to the Constitution?
Good morning, Errol. Well, as you know, due process is laid out in the 5th and 14th Amendments, and legal experts, analysts say it's been interpreted to include anyone on U.S. soil. If you read the language, it says a person is entitled to due process, not citizens. So it's been understood and upheld that due process is afforded to even undocumented migrants, especially when you're talking about immigration proceedings or deportation proceedings. His comments were coming in response to a discussion, a larger discussion over the administration's deportation actions, which, as you know, Errol, are subject to a lot of litigation, legal challenges playing out in court right now.
That exchange is attracting the biggest response at the moment. Since then, though, the president has also indicated his intention to reopen the Alcatraz prison in California. He says it should be for the most violent offenders, although it hasn't housed inmates in 60 years because it was too expensive to run. What more do we know about his suggestion and how serious he is or is not about it?
Unclear at this point, but in this social media post, he called to expand and reopen Alcatraz to house, he says, America's most ruthless and violent offenders, saying it will serve as a symbol of law. As you noted, Alcatraz, you can see there in that video, if you've been to it, it's on an island off of San Francisco. It was built in the 1930s to house notorious criminals, including Al Capone. You said the Bureau of Prisons actually closed it because it was too costly, too expensive to run. And since then, it's been a very popular tourist site. So there's a lot of questions on this regarding how this would work, the cost, the practicality, and the feasibility of reopening this former prison.
Yeah, I count myself among tourists who have seen it. And when you go there, you realize, oh, this is why they closed it. It's falling to pieces even now. And, you know, to critics of the president, sometimes they'll suggest that he says these things to distract from other major and important stories. Another thing he said he wants to do is put a 100% tariff on foreign-made movies. How would that even work if that is a serious policy proposal?
Again, unclear at this point. A lot of questions about this one. And this was another weekend social media post in which he said that the U.S. movie industry is dying. And he actually said that incentives being offered by other countries pose a national security threat. So in this post, he's directed his Department of Commerce and the U.S. Trade Representative to begin the process of imposing 100% tariffs on any and all movies coming into our country produced on foreign lands. Now, again, unclear how this would work. And note that a lot of movies, big and small, have production in both the U.S. and other countries as well. Errol, I have reached out to the Motion Pictures Association, have not heard back.
Yeah, Barbie was made in the UK, Lord of the Rings made in New Zealand. The list goes on and on and on. Natalie Brand doing what she can to make sense of news coming out of the White House. Natalie, thank you for that. Now, while Wall Street has seen gains over the last 9 days or so, the major indexes are slightly down this morning. You see the Dow Jones Industrial Average next to me. Markets have been open for about half an hour. Investors have settled down, you could say, lately after President Trump issued that 90-day pause on some of his new tariffs. Well, in that interview with NBC's Meet the Press this past weekend, the president insisted the country will benefit economically eventually.
I've only just been here for a little more than 3 months. But the stock market, look at what's happened in the last short period of time. Didn't it have 9 or 10 days in a row or 11 days where it's gone up? And the tariffs have just started kicking in. And we're doing really well. Psychologically, I mean, the fake news was giving me such press on the tariffs. The tariffs are going to make us rich. We're going to be a very rich country.
Isabel Wang is a markets reporter at Market Watch. Isabel, thanks for being with us. There's a real disconnect between what the president is saying there and how Americans are feeling. He said psychologically, just wait for it. But what is the financial reality out there for millions of people right now?
Right. There does seem to be a disconnect. For example, the White House often points to strong economic indicators like low unemployment rate or steady job growth to argue the economy is still pretty strong. But at the same time, many consumers are still feeling squeezed by higher prices or higher housing costs. People are more cautious about spending money on everything, and consumer sentiment keeps plunging over the past few months. So yes, how people feel about economy doesn't always line up with the headlines.
Yep, and that consumer confidence tells you how excited people are or are not about digging into their pockets and spending the money they do have. I want to ask you about Warren Buffett. He suggested at a Berkshire Hathaway board they'll replace him with CEO successor Greg Abel, I believe, at the end of this year. There were gasps in the room, there were cheers. It was kind of an emotional roller coaster for some folks. Just help us understand the significance of Warren Buffett's retirement for Berkshire and the legacy he will leave behind, although he'll still be linked with the account.
I mean, that move will mark the end of an era. It also raises questions about the future of Berkshire Hathaway. But Buffett on Saturday said Greg Abel would have the final word on all decisions at Berkshire, including the capital allocation. And to be honest, Greg Abel has been well known to Berkshire shareholders and the general public for many years. So his visibility has been on the rise, especially at the annual shareholder meeting. Also on Saturday, Abel did assure investors that Berkshire's capital allocation strategy, which centers on value investing and also like a long-term perspective, that will be the same after he takes over by the end of this year.
Yeah, and Warren Buffett always suggests be boring with your investments, take your time, and don't be emotional about what happens on any one given day. Isabel Wang, great to see you. Thanks for joining us here in New York. All right, still to come for you right now. Israel's cabinet has approved plans to intensify its offensive in Gaza with a strategy to seize more territory and call up additional troops. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is also vowing to retaliate against Yemen's Houthi rebels after this. It was a missile strike which briefly shut down Israel's main airport over the weekend. The explosion happened near an access road and it injured 4 people. CBS News Middle East reporter Courtney Keeley joins us now to discuss this and more, joining us from Studio 57. Courtney, good morning to you. Israel used this language of conquering the Gaza Strip and holding it. Has it used that type of language before, and what might it mean for the remaining hostages there?
Well, the Israeli Security Cabinet made this unanimous decision to expand operations into Gaza, not just going in with troops and then leaving, but going in and staying. And their plan is to ramp it up over months. It's not happening immediately, but what they're doing is calling up Israeli reservists, beefing up their military so that they can have boots on the ground. They called it an occupying plan, and that is a word that is quite kryptonite, and most people, you don't call it occupying forces, but they're going in. They're also talking about being in charge of all the aid. Now we're entering the third month of an Israeli blockade of aid. There are limited clean water, limited food, limited fuel for the people of Gaza, and also the hostages. It's believed that 24 hostages are still alive in the Gaza Strip, and the organization that represents the hostages' families are saying that they do not want this expansion. They fear for the lives of the hostages, and they do not want the Israeli government to escalate at all, Errol.
And meanwhile, Courtney, the issue for Israel hasn't de-escalated. Some U.S.-based airlines have now stopped their flights into Tel Aviv since the Houthi strikes that we just showed our viewers over the weekend. Tell us more about that angle of this.
Well, the Houthi strikes are in solidarity, according to the Houthi spokesman, for the Palestinians. And this one missile that the Houthis claimed was hypersonic, that apparently can go is up to the speed of 16 times of the speed of sound, actually evaded the defense missile battery pack that Israel uses to shut down missiles. And it was happening right near this airport. It was a major thoroughfare right in the parking lot. And the Houthis are saying that they're scaling up operations. They're not starting. They're going to include a blockade of the Israeli airport, which also escalates all sorts of military activity for the U.S. military strikes on the Houthis in Yemen and for the Israeli response. So escalation, nothing is leading towards a ceasefire now, but people are pointing to the fact that President Trump will be in the region, in the Gulf next week, meeting with the Saudis and the Qataris and leaders from the UAE, and maybe there could be some talks of ceasefire with other regional players. But right now, inflammatory language, occupation, troops intending to move into Gaza, and the Houthis scaling up their attacks on Israel.
Yeah, and so many innocent people and civilians at risk in the meantime. Courtney Keeley, great to have you on. Thanks so much. Now, at this moment, if you're flying in and out of Newark International Airport, you're likely seeing this. There have been cancellations and delays for days. The airport has just been a mess. Some airlines right now are proactively canceling flights as well, so be sure to check your itinerary. Officials say equipment outages and staffing issues are to blame. CBS News correspondent Meg Oliver is joining us now from Newark Liberty Airport with more. Meg, we both fly in and out of this place regularly. I'm wondering, for people who have a scheduled flight, what you can tell them about why we've got these persistent delays and issues and why they haven't been resolved yet.
Well, Errol, happy Monday from a deserted Newark International Airport. I'm telling you, I've never seen it this quiet, especially on a Monday, a busy day for travelers that are flying out. We know the main reason we're seeing all these delays and cancellations is due to a severe staffing shortage with air traffic controllers. Now, the airport is also talking about some fog that's playing a role today. There's also construction and some repair work going on at the airport. But this all comes down to a problem that has been building for years. That they need more air traffic controllers. It all came to a head last week when United Airlines had to cancel 35 round-trip flights starting last Friday out of Newark just to handle everything that was happening. Now, looking at the numbers today, there are more than 100 cancellations here. There are more than 170 delays. When I went and looked at the board, it's lit up in red and orange with the cancellations and delays. Some flights are delayed up to 5 hours. So as you said, if you are flying anytime soon, make sure you are keeping track of your flight status, because it is very likely that you could be facing a delay. And this is a problem that is going to take years to fix. This is not something that they're going to be able to resolve right away. Errol?
Yeah. Great advice, Meg. We're going to speak more about this in depth next. Thank you so much, Meg Oliver at Newark Liberty International Airport. CBS News transportation safety expert and analyst Robert Sumwalt joins us now. He's a former chair of the NTSB and always helps us out whenever we're trying to understand what's happening in the world of aviation. Bob, good morning to you. I remember during the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic, there were these staffing shortages in aircraft control towers that seemed to be linked to the pandemic. We are so many years out of that now. So why are we seeing this pervasive issue in Newark? Could we see it elsewhere in the country?
Well, good morning, Errol. It's good to see you. And as Meg pointed out, this is an issue that has built up over the years. It goes back to the budget sequestration of 2013. Then we had a government shutdown for 5 weeks where the training academy was closed. No controllers could get into the pipeline. COVID shut down the academy for 4 months. Then on-job training was canceled at many facilities for up to 2 years. We're just at a crescendo right now where it's all mounting up.
And the other thing to note is that when it comes to air traffic controllers, you cannot just quickly train someone and put them somewhere. These are jobs that require very specific technical skills. So how do we get any closer to resolving this?
Well, you're right. It takes years to get a controller to be the fully certified positions. It takes literally 3 to 5 years to get somebody through. And so, as Meg said, this is not going to be something that we're going to fix overnight. It's going to take a long time. I think the efforts that the airlines are putting in place, like United, by actually canceling flights, that's a short-term fix. But the ultimate fix is to get more controllers in the pipeline and to upgrade the equipment that is dogging things down.
I want to also, Bob, quickly ask you about a situation we saw in Washington from last week, but will be interesting to anyone who travels through the nation's capital. 2 planes had to be diverted from their approach to DCA because a helicopter was in their flight path. This is the same area where we watched in horror as an airliner collided with an Army helicopter. So what do we know about why this happened, and shouldn't it have been prevented?
Well, it should be prevented, and the NTSB is actually looking at this and to figure it out. But actually, the good news is this is an example of how the system does work when something is out of the ordinary. The air traffic controller detected the situation and directed the 2 airliners to go around. So that's the good news right there.
All right, Bob Sumwalt joining us from Florida. We appreciate your insight, Bob. Thank you.
Thank you, Errol.
All right, millions of student loan borrowers could now be facing garnished wages. That's if they default on their federal loans. Coming up, we'll break down a new policy going into effect today. You're in the right place, streaming CBS News 24/7. Beginning today, more than 5 million federal student loan borrowers could face penalties if they do not pay back their loans on time. The Department of Education is allowing lenders to take action to collect, which includes garnishing wages. CBS News correspondent Lana Zach brings us more on this.
Are you worried about drowning? Yes. I mean, we're kind of drowning as it is.
Jana Hartwood owes more than $40,000 in student loans from her nursing degree.
I don't think anyone takes out a loan with the intention of not paying it back. It's how easily you can pay it back that's the problem.
2 years ago, her son was born with a medical condition. To treat it, Hartwood exhausted her savings and had to take out money from her 401k. During the pandemic, student loans were put into forbearance, but when repayments resumed last year, Hartwood says she was never notified. After hearing of the agency's collection decision from a news report, she checked her account.
I was shocked. Like, I had no idea that my loans were delinquent at that point.
So they never told you that you had any problems?
Nope. I checked every email. I got statements that had a 0 on it.
With all of the chaos right now, it is exceptionally cruel to start these draconian collection tactics at this time.
Persis Yu is an expert in student loan law. She says steep job cuts at the Education Department and steps to dismantle it have left the loan system in disarray.
Borrowers cannot get answers from their servicers. Many of the servicers have hours-long call wait times in order to get just a simple answer about how much do I owe, how do I pay my loan.
For borrowers who have faced financial hardship, it's especially difficult.
There are not provisions that take into consideration when families have extraordinary circumstances, like having to pay for the medical care of a loved one. It's an impossible standard for so many to meet, and that's why so many borrowers do fall into default.
The Education Department under President Trump blames the former administration, telling CBS News because of their, quote, attempts to transfer student debt to every taxpayer, the student loan portfolio is in a dire financial state. As for Hartwood, after hours on the phone, she still has no clear answer on her loans.
How much can you afford to pay back right now?
None. It's not easy. Every week is hard. Every paycheck is immediately gone. It's gone before we even, have it.
Now, Hartwood wanted to stress that she has a good job as a nurse and that she has a good support team, but still, a third of her paycheck goes to child care. That's in addition to the other payments that she needs to make for her and her son to get by and pay their bills. So all of this is very concerning, particularly when it comes to the idea that the government may start garnishing her wages as soon as this summer.
Yeah, Lana, that's a great interview, and it's such a difficult topic for people to open up about, the amount of money that they have to pay back and these financial struggles. Help us understand how this collection plan will work starting today and who it hits.
Well, immediately it's going to hit people who receive government benefits such as Social Security. Now, when I heard that, Errol, I thought, we're talking about young people, aren't we? Why are we talking about Social Security benefits being garnished? But what I heard from that expert is that, in fact, there are so many people whose student loans have stretched throughout the entirety of their lives and their careers. This is also going to apply potentially to people with Social Security disability, and they are making those payments. It's going to be an involuntary collection. That is going to start, that aspect of it is going to start today, as I mentioned, for Hartwood and others who are trying to get back into a non-default status. They're hoping that they can do that before the government is set to start sending out letters to employers about involuntary garnishment of wages, and that would start this summer. But we're talking about 5 million borrowers across the country. As you know, those payments were paused during COVID-19 by the first Trump administration. The Biden administration stretched that out. We're going to have a lot more details, practical tips on Evening News tonight for people who find themselves in this situation, what they can do and the cautions that they need to know before they make any decisions.
It's advice people desperately need. Great to see you, Lana Zak, at your alma mater there at the University of Iowa. Thank you, Lana. All right, still to come for you all, a warning about economic worries and where the U.S. could be headed due to the escalating trade war. Robert Costa will join us in just a few moments with more of his interview with Larry Summers from Sunday Morning. Also coming up, jury selection underway right now in the sex crimes trial against Sean Diddy Combs. We'll bring you the latest from outside the courtroom. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. A warm welcome back to CBS News 24/7. Here are the big stories we're tracking for you right now. Police in Arizona are investigating a shooting at a restaurant in downtown Glendale. Officers say 3 people are dead and 5 wounded. Police have detained several people but have not yet released a motive. Investigators say there's no further threat to the public. Temple University has suspended a student following an anti-Semitic incident at a Philadelphia bar. This went viral. Maybe you've seen it. It happened Saturday night at Dave Portnoy's Barstool Sansom Street Club. Social media posts showed a man holding a sign with a vulgar anti-Semitic message. Portnoy posted to social media yesterday saying he fired 2 employees who did not stop the incident and decided to send 2 other people involved to visit Auschwitz. He said he wants to make this a teaching opportunity. And police in Brazil have arrested 2 people they say were plotting to bomb a Lady Gaga concert in Rio de Janeiro over the weekend. An estimated 2.5 million fans were out there at Copacabana Beach for this musical event. Rio police say they believe the suspects were trying to target Brazil's LGBTQ community. Lady Gaga's security team says it was not told about the arrests before the concert, and Brazilian officials justified that decision by saying it didn't want to create panic. Really remarkable. All right, now the economy is a major focus of President Trump's agenda here in his second term. CBS News chief Washington analyst and CBS Sunday Morning national correspondent Robert Costa sat down with former U.S. Treasury Secretary Lawrence Summers to get a sense of the state of the economy. Take a look.
What are they saying in the boardrooms across America right now about President Trump's economic policy? What's the real talk?
I think there's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of slightly stunned head shaking. I think there's still hope that this will all be a bad dream from which they can wake up.
If you had a moment with President Trump to talk about the economy, what would you say?
I would plead with him to set a course that he believes he can stick to, so we don't have a kind of generalized paralysis waiting on his next press conference that tips the economy into recession.
And Bob Costa joins us now for more on this really interesting interview from our D.C. bureau. Bob, good morning to you. I want to get your sense on how Larry Summers feels in general about what comes next. He just said there, hopefully the president doesn't get stuck in what may be stagnation or a stale economy. And we've got the Federal Reserve issuing a decision on interest rates this week. From your chat with Larry, what does he think comes next?
Great to be with you. Based on my conversation with Secretary Summers, it's evident that executives on Wall Street, business leaders, they want to see stability. In the wake of President Trump's sweeping tariffs, what he called Liberation Day, there's an expectation, some might call it a hope, that some deals might be cut in the coming days, maybe not between the U.S. and China, but between the U.S. and some allies. So there's at least some sense of how the economy is going to play out on trade policy.
And we know you also spoke with Summers about higher education under President Trump. What was interesting there?
As we've been following here at CBS News, there is a showdown between President Trump and some institutions of higher education, particularly in the Ivy League. The administration has essentially frozen federal grants, billions of dollars in research funds and other materials, because they want to see changes on diversity policy and how anti-Semitism is handled on various campuses. And that has led to an unprecedented standoff. Harvard University, though, more than any other university, is really in the sights of President Trump and his allies like Stephen Miller. And Summers, as a former Harvard president, said it's important for Harvard to stand up to the administration, to not cave.
All right, Bob Costa at our D.C. bureau, thanks for that. Folks should certainly check out his interview from Sunday morning, another strong one. Bob, thank you.
Thank you.
Here in New York, jury selection's underway in the sex trafficking and racketeering case against this man, Sean Diddy Combs. The hip-hop mogul has been in custody since September on federal charges. Combs has pleaded not guilty, and just last week, he rejected a plea deal. CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman joins us now from outside the courthouse with more on what's unfolding. Katrina, good morning to you. What challenges will the court face in its effort today in trying to pick a completely impartial jury?
Good morning, Errol. So jury selection just began in the federal courthouse right behind me. And it's always challenging when you have a high-profile defendant and a high-profile trial. When I was on the security line this morning, there was someone who was showing up for jury duty, and he was saying to me, I know the Diddy trial is happening today. I really don't want to be on it, because people have views on this defendant. People have heard about this case. Jurors also know that this is going to potentially be a very long trial. But there are always challenges for finding this fair and impartial jury when there's so much out there in the media about the defendant. Last week, they even added one question to the jury questionnaire at the defense's request, which was that basically this process started last week with jurors filling out written questionnaires, and the defense wanted the judge to ask if anyone had read more in the media about Combs since that happened, because as we get closer to the trial date, so many articles are coming out about his story.
For all of us, when you get that jury notice, you have to show up and tell the truth about what you do or don't know about the people involved. I'm so curious then how each side is making decisions on what to look for. You know, you mentioned one of the questions on that jury sheet. I'm just wondering what else is on there. What are the questions? Is it things like, have you gone to his concert, paid for his music? How can they filter out and get an impartial jury?
Errol, I haven't seen the jury questionnaire yet, and they were literally about to begin questioning as I stepped out. But there are definitely sensitive questions on that jury questionnaire. They've even talked about allowing jurors to sidebar with the judge and the parties, because this case involves allegations of sexual abuse, kidnapping, arson. They want to know whether people have any of their own experiences with domestic violence, with abuse. These are issues that jurors may not be comfortable speaking about openly in court. This is also a multi-step process, Errol. They're having individual questioning with the jurors, so they may go over some of those more private, sensitive issues during that, and then they're bringing jurors back into the open courtroom for more questions. So there will definitely be questions on there, trying to get a better sense of what they know about Combs, this case and experiences that they may have that relate to issues that are going to come up in this trial.
Yeah, and of course, he's such a high-profile person and has been visible for decades. You've got folks all around the U.S. and the world watching this. Katrina, we appreciate you running outside and updating us on what's happening before you head back inside to get all the latest. Katrina Kaufman here in New York. Thanks, Katrina. All right. Next, crews installed red curtains now on the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica at the Vatican today, ahead of the conclave, which begins Wednesday. Now, when the official voting begins for a new pope, the person who is selected will appear on the balcony and give his first blessing as the leader of the Roman Catholic Church. For more on this, let's bring in CBS News foreign correspondent Chris Livesay. He's in Rome for us and will help us understand what's happening behind you at the Vatican. Good to see you, Chris. Walk us through the process of the conclave. I'm sure you're getting this question all day, every day from your friends and family and the rest of us at the network. So how will things proceed?
Well, prepare yourself for seeing a lot of red, Errol. Lots and lots of cardinals, 133 cardinal electors to be exact from around the world here in Rome to choose who will lead the 1.4 billion Catholics around the world. So starting Wednesday is when these votes start to happen. You've heard of the smoke before, the holy smoke as it's often referred to. I'll break it down for you a little bit because it's color-coded. After the votes, they write them on a piece of paper, they crumple them up, and then they're burned. And then there's actually a fireworks expert or a pyrotechnics expert who has set up a device that creates even more smoke, black if it has not led to a conclusive decision. So if they haven't reached the 2/3 majority to elect a pope, and then white if, in fact, they have arrived at that decision. And you hear these famous words proclaimed from the balcony of St. Peter's behind me, Habemus Papam, we have a pope. And right after that decision has been made, amongst the cardinals, the next pope is asked if he wants to accept that role, and he's asked what name he would like to choose. He also goes into a little antechamber or a sacristy outside of the Sistine Chapel, or a part of the Sistine Chapel, called the Room of Tears. And it's given this name because it's where so many popes throughout the course of history have cried, some of them historically going into fits of hiccups because such was the gravity of the fate that had just befallen them. So it's really quite a dramatic scene, as you can imagine, Errol.
Yeah, and you're helping us kind of get a peek inside what is so secretive, what very few of us ever get to see other than the people selected to be Pope in such a palatial space. Yesterday was the final day of the mourning period for Pope Francis. So do you see a shift in mood now that things are a bit more forward-looking and conversations are centering around who might be the next Pope?
Indeed. Well, you know, now it's sort of like official that we can talk about the next pope, but frankly, people have been doing that even before Pope Francis died. And now that, you know, we can reflect on his papacy and what it meant and how successful some people saw it and how others saw it to be a sort of failure. I mean, it really depends on what side of the political aisle you're on. And there are indeed different factions. There are the more traditional sides of the Catholic Church who see a lot of the arguably progressive positions that Pope Francis held to have been anathema to the direction of the church. But then there are progressives within the church who thinks that, you know, Francis didn't go far enough, that he needed to be more definitive on opening up the church to members of the gay and lesbian community, for instance. So there's really a variety of opinions floating around, and we really won't see how they play out until the next pope is named.
Yeah, and Chris, as we have been discussing for a few weeks now, there's no guarantee that the next pope will be more progressive than Pope Francis was. It could go either way. It's all about what the other cardinals want. We appreciate you keeping us up to speed. Chris, thank you very much. And a programming note for you all, you can watch our coverage of the Papal Conclave all day, Wednesday, right here on CBS News 24/7. Of course, we'll bring you updates as the cardinals go through the process that Chris just laid out of selecting the next pope while we all wait for the smoke. All right, homeowners in Lexington, Massachusetts are cleaning up right now from all of this. They had a fast-moving storm. It sent trees smashing through roofs, took down power lines. You see the aftermath. The thunderstorm forced residents to leave their homes, while others remain in the dark right now. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with a look at that area and other rainstorms impacting some cities. Grant, what's going on?
Hey, good morning, Errol. Happy Monday. Guys, look, typically we see these weather patterns that are fairly progressive where they bring the threat for severe weather and then they move on out and you have a couple of days to recover. The pattern that we're in right now is somewhat of a blocking pattern. I want to show you this here because what we've got is basically two areas of low pressure that are sort of spinning their wheels. We've got one that's back over the southern plains, back into really the southwest. It's moving to the east. You got another one that's spinning back through parts of Kentucky, bringing a lot more of that moisture and that threat for some heavy rainfall and some storms. This pattern we call a blocking pattern, and this one specifically, when you look at it, looks like the Greek letter omega. You may have heard this here recently, this omega blocking pattern, and it is just a stalled pattern, and it will continue to bring unsettled weather near those areas of low pressure. So as we go through the next couple of days, while it is starting to move a little bit, it's a very slow-moving pattern, and that will bring unsettled weather over some of the same parts of the country for a couple of days here. Now, today we have a couple of areas that we're watching for some severe weather. One over western Texas. It's a level 3, so an enhanced threat for severe weather. And then once again, that slight risk for severe weather over portions of the Ohio Valley up into the northeast. Watch here as we take you through the next couple of days here. We'll see those storms again move into the northeast. That will bring heavy rainfall. Also severe weather and some winter weather on the backside of that low pressure system for the Rockies. That whole storm system slowly moves to the east. So once again, a level 2 out of 5 slight risk for severe storms over eastern Texas tomorrow. Large hail, heavy rainfall, damaging winds, maybe even some tornadoes. That continues through at least midweek, Errol. But I think finally as we get into Thursday and Friday, the pattern begins to break down, hopefully giving more sunshine as we go into Mother's Day weekend. Back to you.
And I got to thank you. At the end of last week, Grant, you told us about rain coming in. I was able to do a bike tour here in New York on Sunday, and I was like, got to finish quickly. Grant said the rain was coming, and I finished before the rain.
That's right.
So listen to
That was your
Grant
motivation.
Gilmore's tips. Exactly. More motivation for the rest of you across the country. Grant, we'll see you later this hour. Thanks so much. All right, big law is fighting back at the Trump administration. Law experts are sounding the alarm about executive orders they say are threatening the U.S. legal system. You're in the right place, streaming CBS News 24/7. Welcome back. In recent weeks, President Trump signed executive orders against several law firms, ordering orders with the power to effectively destroy them. 60 Minutes correspondent Scott Pelley spoke with several lawyers who are warning Trump's assault on the legal profession threatens the rule of law itself.
Prominent attorney and Democrat in San Francisco. You're not suggesting that the president's running a protection racket.
I am. I'm suggesting that he is violating the rule that says you can't offer a thing of value in return for an official act. That happens to be the definition of bribery. Anybody else who came to Washington and said, I will give you $100 million of free legal services if you do this for me, would be convicted of a bribe.
Kecker is helping recruit law firms nationwide to fight back. More than 500 firms, large and small, have signed up in support.
We don't have to agree on politics, but we do have to agree that the legal profession has to protect the rule of law in the United States, which means lawyers and judges need to be independent from the executive branch.
If the president brings the legal profession to heel, what situation is the country in then?
No rule of law. You're in a dictatorship. That's what happened in China. It happened in Russia. These are legal systems that look like legal systems, but in fact are controlled by a dictatorship.
I just think that the law firms have to behave.
In the eye of the president. Are we reaching a point where a person will go to a law firm with a case that is opposed to the president of the United States, and the law firm will think, do we really want to take this case?
We're already there. They are deciding not to take on certain kinds of clients that might upset the administration, or not taking on certain kinds of causes that might put them in the crosshairs of the administration.
If lawyers give up their independence. What is lost?
The rule of law. And this is why the business community ought to care. Today, it might be that, Donald Trump thinks he can take over the election system through one of his executive orders. Tomorrow, maybe it's the banking system. After that, maybe it's contracts. Maybe he decrees, I'm going to decide which contracts are binding and which contracts aren't binding. So the legal system is fundamental to how our society operates, how capitalism operates, and everyone should have a stake in that.
Conservative law professor Donald Ayer is optimistic the courts will strike down the president's orders. The question then, he told us, is whether Trump will obey.
This is a very big deal. What's happening now is a very big deal. It's a whole nother chapter in our history, and we need to call upon the values that have brought us to where we are in order to get through it.
And that was just a sampling of the story. You really should watch the whole thing. You can see Scott Pelley's entire 60 Minutes interview on demand on CBS News 24/7 and, of course, on Paramount+. We've got much more news for you next. Stay right where you are. This is CBS News 24/7. Welcome back. The rainy Kentucky Derby reminded us about the heavy flooding that hit the state just a few weeks ago. The floodwaters overtook the legendary Buffalo Trace Distillery. It caused catastrophic damage. CBS News Homeland Security correspondent Nicole Scanga shows us how crews are racing to get the bourbon and the local economy flowing again.
For over 2 centuries, the Buffalo Trace Distillery in Frankfort, Kentucky, has bottled up scores of spirits.
Weller's is a favorite. I like Blanton's as well.
But America's oldest running distillery ground to a halt last month amid historic floods. When master distiller Harlan Wheatley says the nearby Kentucky River rose to over 48 feet.
Every building that you see had 4 or 5 feet of water in it,
marking a new record waterline.
The earliest one is 1883.
Now memorialized on the distillery's walls and columns. But General Manager Tyler Adams says the Kentucky distillery has weathered storms before.
We've been through Prohibition, other floods, tornadoes that took off part of a warehouse.
As electricians replace wiring in gas boilers, the bourbon crafters say there are no plans to move to higher ground.
We have no plans of slowing down.
Even with the water rising?
Oh, that water is just a speed bump.
Crews hurried to restore tanks ahead of the distillery's busiest days, dubbed Derby Week by locals.
You need bourbon, you need mint juleps, and you need racehorses. Otherwise, it's not Derby.
And visitors flocking to the Run for the Roses also raced here. This week, the distillery reopened limited tours and tastings.
Buffalo Trace!
Frankfort's mayor says the reopen marks a step in the right direction for a community still reeling from disaster.
Well, it's an iconic part of our identity here in Frankfort. Bourbon, of course, is one of our major industries.
To see it back up and running means something to Frankfort.
Yeah, and it means something to us, too, because, we have 770 employees. We have a lot of families that depend on a job, and we want to be up and running.
To resilience.
A comeback story.
Cheers.
That will make you want to raise a glass. Nicole Scanga, CBS News, Frankfort, Kentucky.
There you go, Nicole, with a nice taste to the end of the story. Grant, if they had an extra barrel, they should send them our way, right? If it was damaged and maybe had a little left in there, we could help them out a little bit, surely.
Yeah, we can find something to do with that. Hey, guys, speaking of stormy weather, that continues as we go through the week. Kind of a split area that we're watching for severe weather today, up to the north and east, back through western Pennsylvania, also back into western Texas. A level 3 out of 5 for that slight risk for severe storms. Damaging winds, tornadoes, and large hail, all possible. Otherwise, heavy rainfall with those 2 areas that we're watching for today. That continues into tonight. That area of low pressure slowly moves to the east. So eastern Texas watching for that threat of severe weather tomorrow. Errol, back to you.
Important warnings, always listen to Grant. Thanks so much, Grant. That does it for me. I'll see you back here at 7 a.m. with another edition of the CBS Morning News. But stay where you are. After the break, Mugo Odigwe is live from San Francisco with all your breaking news from coast to coast. This is CBS News 24/7.